Next on the news.
By the merits of your son's death, heroes.
The Diocese of Brooklyn's Lenten pilgrimage has come to an end. We take a look at the whole journey from the first stop to the last and how the church in Brooklyn grew spiritually along the way. While the Lenten pilgrimage might be over, plenty are still hoping to become pilgrims of hope and celebrate the 2025 Jubilee.
As the faithful flock to participate, some are hoping this visit will free them of sin. I'm Jessica Easthope, and I'll explain coming up.
Plus, while the Pope may not be celebrating Holy Week liturgies, he was able to keep one Holy Thursday tradition, a look into his visit to a Roman prison. I'm Christine Persichetti. Currents News starts right now.
Repent and believe in the gospel.
With ashes on their foreheads and mobile passports in hand, they began a journey.
Holy Mary, Mother of God.
Checking in at a different church every day for almost 40 days. Now, the Diocese of Brooklyn's Lenten pilgrimage has come to an end. Throughout the season of Lent, the Diocese of Immigrants was on the move, seeing the different parishes that Brooklyn and Queens has to offer. Their shepherd, Brooklyn Bishop Robert Brennan, led the way, and it was Bishop Brennan who helped them close out the journey, filled with prayer and reflection. A faithful journey ends as the holiest time of the year begins, the Easter Triduum. A Tenebrae service held at St. Charles Borromeo Church in Brooklyn Heights on Wednesday, the last stop on the Diocese of Brooklyn's Lenten pilgrimage. It's the 37th church visited by pilgrims during this holy season of Lent, a stop just as important as their first on Ash Wednesday. When Bishop Robert Brennan celebrated Mass at the Cathedral Basilica of St. James.
It's amazing. It's the best time. The pilgrimage is just, it's so spiritually renewing.
Bishop Brennan led the pilgrims on most of the stops and welcomed them all, new and returning. Here he is on day 3 at Our Lady of Mount Carmel in Astoria.
There's just so much devotion, so much faith. People are really longing to be close to Jesus Christ, and that's such an inspiration.
Many pilgrims were inspired by Michelle Guerrier. The St. Therese of Lisieux parishioner made it her mission to hit every stop on the pilgrimage.
This diocese has the most beautiful churches, and we tend to stay in our parish home and don't realize what we have out there.
Together, the pilgrims grew in faith and fellowship, no matter their church, their borough, or their age.
Holy Mary, Mother of God.
Students from St. Joseph's Catholic Academy in Astoria led the packed parish in praying the rosary during the 18th stop of the pilgrimage.
It was a blessing because I love to pray all the time. I pray before I go to bed, and I feel like it brings me closer to God.
One of the stops on this year's Lenten pilgrimage wasn't even at a church. The bishop took part in a holy hour for vocations and a vocations fair at the Immaculate Conception Center in Douglaston. While the Lenten pilgrimage may be over, faithful can still become pilgrims of hope. The Diocese of Brooklyn has designated 6 parishes as Jubilee Shrine churches, allowing people to join the Universal Church as they celebrate the 2025 Holy Year. Some Lenten pilgrims who traveled along the route have already visited these churches. Currents News' Jessica Easthope filed this report from one of those stops, the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph in Prospect Heights.
Joyce Peters says there's no better time than Lent to have a rebirth of her faith life.
This is the most wonderful time of the year for me because I know that I'm a sinner and God is merciful and kind.
Joyce received her 3rd plenary indulgence at the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph in Prospect Heights, one of 6 designated Jubilee Shrine churches on the Diocese of Brooklyn's Lenten pilgrimage. Joyce has visited every church since the pilgrimage began on Ash Wednesday.
I'm 82. I want to see God's face. Father, forgive me for I have sinned. Save my soul. And I'm sorry, and I ask God to forgive the others who have wronged me.
Rector of the Co-Cathedral, Father Christopher Henyu, says it's not hard to receive a plenary indulgence, but the criteria promotes deep spiritual reflection.
Recognizing our sinful nature, but yet we're hopeful of what's to come. We're hopeful for change. We're hopeful for conversion. And that's the season of Lent. And that's what it means to to receive that plenary indulgence.
In order to receive the grace of a plenary indulgence and be free from the temporal punishment of your sins, you'll need to meet certain conditions, like making a pilgrimage to a designated Jubilee Shrine Church, confessing your sins, receiving the Eucharist, and praying for the intentions of Pope Francis.
Mass is offered every day. Our church is open every day, allowing people to come and pray. And so it's a great way for them to celebrate this Jubilee year.
It was Sheila Lopez's 5th stop on the Lenten Pilgrimage, a journey she says has already enriched her life.
It's refreshing to see everyone so happy and involved. And if you are trying to be a strong participant in your faith, they're not unreachable goals.
If you missed coming to one of the 6 Jubilee Shrine churches during the Diocese of Brooklyn's Lenten Pilgrimage, that's okay. As long as you meet the criteria, you can visit and receive a plenary indulgence any day from now until the Feast of the Immaculate Conception on December 8th. In Prospect Heights, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
To hear about everything Jubilee, both in the diocese and beyond, just go to dioceseofbrooklyn.org. And of course, you can go to thetablet.org for full coverage of both the Lenten Pilgrimage and the Jubilee. Also on Wednesday, the Diocese of Brooklyn prayed for the victims of a recent tragedy. This Mass at St. Rita Church in the Cypress Hills, East New York section of Brooklyn, remembering the more than 200 people killed when the roof of a nightclub collapsed in the Dominican Republic last week. Brooklyn's Auxiliary Bishop Emeritus, Octavio Cisneros, celebrated the Mass, asking Our Lady of Alta Gracia, the patroness of the Dominican Republic, to bring comfort to the loved ones of those who tragically lost their lives. The Mass was organized by the Dominican Apostolate of the Diocese of Brooklyn. In a social media post, Bishop Brennan also offered his prayers to those killed and injured in the tragedy. In neighboring Puerto Rico, while faithful in the heavily Catholic U.S. territory were getting ready to celebrate Easter, more than 1 million people experienced a blackout Wednesday. Officials rushed to reassure the thousands of tourists who came to the island to celebrate Christ's resurrection that the hotels and other businesses were operating with generators. By that night, crews were able to restore about 12% of Puerto Rico's power. Officials say a majority of the remaining people without power will likely have electricity in the next 48 to 72 hours. The White House has confirmed that Vice President JD Vance is scheduled to travel to the Vatican through Easter. On Good Friday, he'll meet with the Holy See's Secretary of State, Cardinal Pietro Parolin, who's been in charge of receiving government officials while Pope Francis recovers. It's unknown if the vice president will also see Pope Francis, but the White House did confirm he will meet with Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. He's set to discuss economic and geopolitical priorities with both leaders. While more than 1,800 priests, bishops, and cardinals were at St. Peter's Basilica for Rome's Chrism Mass, noticeably absent was Pope Francis. The Vatican had previously announced the Bishop of Rome would not be celebrating the Holy Week liturgies, but many wondered if the Pope would still make an appearance. Pope Francis was able to keep one Holy Thursday tradition, the Holy Father visiting a jail in Rome, where he met with about 70 people detained there. While he didn't celebrate the traditional Holy Thursday Mass and washing of the feet, the pontiff did pray with, talk to, and bless the inmates who regularly participate in the jail's religious education program, and wave at some who were looking at the Holy Father behind barred windows. As he was leaving, Pope Francis spoke about his visit with reporters.
Salve, Santità, come si sente prima di tutto?
Mi sento sicuro.
Questo lo vediamo.
Ogni volta che io entro in questi posti mi domando perché loro e non io.
A reporter then asked the Holy Father about his Holy Week experience. His response, "I'm experiencing it as best I can." Be sure to stick with Net TV for full Holy Week coverage. Coming up next at 7:30 p.m., Net TV will broadcast live the Mass of the Lord's Supper for Holy Thursday. On Good Friday, there will be 3 services: a Way of the Cross at 10 a.m., a Spanish Procession of the Lord at 12 p.m., and the Passion of the Lord at 3 p.m. The Easter Vigil will be at 8 p.m. that Saturday, and on Easter Sunday, there will be 6 Masses for the faithful to view: 9 a.m. Creole, 11 a.m. English, 1:30 p.m. Spanish, 4 p.m. Italian, 5 p.m. Polish, and 6 p.m. English. A pro-life organization celebrated 33 years of life-affirming care with an annual gala. The sold-out event held on Long Island supported the Bridge to Life in College Point, Queens, which for the last 3 decades has provided necessary services to expectant mothers in need and their families. Among this year's honorees, Monsignor Alfred Lapinto and Father Patrick Keating, the CEO and Deputy CEO of Catholic Charities of Brooklyn and Queens. And finally tonight, an event at a Brooklyn Catholic school meant bedtime became showtime. So cute. These are the kindergartners through 4th graders from Bay Ridge Catholic Academy who were rehearsing during music class for their event called Pajama Party. Students are asked to don their best sleepwear for an evening of singing, dancing, snapping, and napping. Sounds perfect. That is this Currents News Update. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Before we go, we want to take one last look at the Diocese of Brooklyn's Lenten Pilgrimage. Hope to see you again next time. They made a commitment to faith. Now these catechumens are counting down the days to the Easter Vigil when they proudly join the ranks of Catholics and take their own place in the pews.
Right now, I feel God with me.
For some, the journey started on their own years ago.
I feel lighter, freer. It's one for my own personal journey and own personal relationship, but it's also to strengthen my family as well.
For others, it took a village and some guidance.
We wanted him to have a community, to feel comfortable, to have family.
But no matter what steps they took, it all leads to the same place. Home.
Lord, hear our prayer.
This Saturday at 7, a Currents News special, Coming to Catholicism.